Oh, just a little minor technical detail. Merci. Hello, bonjour tout le monde. Before we begin, I do want to acknowledge that the territory we're meeting on today, the territory where these negotiations are being held, is the unceded territory of the Kanien'kehá:ka, and this place has long served as a site for meeting of Indigenous nations coming together for exchange and conversation. So it's very appropriate that we're having this conversation here today. My name is Megan Leslie, and I am President and CEO of World Wildlife Fund Canada, WWF Canada. And joining me here on stage to my right, on the left, your left, I'm joined by Stephanie Tharassi, the Executive Director of Seal River Watershed Alliance, a partnership of 4 First Nations working with Inuit neighbors to create the Seal River Watershed Indigenous Protected Area in northern Manitoba. She's also a member of the CBD-Dene First Nation. I'm so sorry, you are not Stephanie. Stephanie is not on my right. I need wayfinding. Stephanie is on my left to your right. So Stephanie is a member of the CBD-Dene First Nation from Tattoo Lake, Manitoba. She is a hide tanner and a caribou eater and is honored to work on behalf of her community. I'll continue on my left with Stephen Nita. Stephen is a member of the WWF First Nation. He was elected to the Northwest Territories Legislative Assembly in 1999 and chief of the WWF First Nation in 2008. Stephen served as the nation's lead negotiator in the creation of the Tai-Dene Indigenous Protected Area, one of the largest protected areas in North America, and was a core member of the Indigenous Circle of Experts, contributing to the historic report, We Rise Together. Nadina Gardner is a member of the Cumberland House Cree Nation and is a traditional land user and advocate for the Saskatchewan River Delta. And down at the end, we have James Snyder joining us, VP of Science, Knowledge, and Innovation at WWF Canada. James is the senior author of WWF Canada's Beyond Targets report, which provides a new vision for protected areas in Canada that deliver benefits for wildlife and climate in a way that advances Indigenous peoples' rights and priorities. One of the main policy instruments to slow the loss of biodiversity and the degradation of nature is the creation of protected and conserved areas. However, there's a broad consensus that so far, not enough land, freshwater, and sea has been protected to reverse biodiversity decline. WWF Canada and the WWF Network supports the inclusion of a target in the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework to conserve at least 30% of the world's land, fresh water, and oceans by 2030. And essential to this target is a rights-based approach that respects the priorities of Indigenous peoples and recognizes and secures the rights of Indigenous peoples and local communities. This means ensuring their free, prior, and informed consent during conservation decision-making. It's vital that the right places are conserved and protected if we're going to safeguard biodiversity. And 80% of remaining biodiversity is in the lands, waters, and territories of Indigenous peoples and local communities due to their stewardship and sustainable use of these areas for thousands of years. For protected areas to be successful, we must reimagine our approach. Until now, conservation and establishment of protected areas have resulted in these islands of conservation that haven't at times made consideration for things like connectivity, ecological representation, the potential to store carbon, and without consideration of the impact on the livelihood and disruption of Indigenous peoples. So what do we expect from protected areas? Well, protected areas and conserved areas in the future must prioritize equitable and just conservation outcomes. They must provide maximum benefits for both biodiversity and carbon. They must advance the rights of Indigenous peoples, the responsibilities and governance of Indigenous peoples, including through the establishment of Indigenous Protected and Conserved Areas, or IPCAs. Of course, when communities indicate that that is a priority for them, along with full consent, participation, and leadership of Indigenous communities that live within them. Here in Canada, where our government has already committed to protecting 30% of lands and waters by 2030, several IPCAs are established, they're underway or proposed. And today we are fortunate to be joined by these Indigenous leaders sitting with me here up on this stage who will share their experiences with stewarding these lands. First up, Stephen Nita.
Thank you, Megan.
Hit your...
Merci, Cho, Megan. Signia, c'est donc un écrit d'assis. Die signer de Nike see. The signia killed there, you know, about Rilare. I'm saying my language, the Dennis Northland language. Fellow Dennis Northland speaker over here understood, probably the only one that understood what I just said. But basically, I'm stating that I'm happy to be here. The subject matter that we're discussing here in Montreal is such an important subject matter. If we don't do this right, we're all in peril and we're all going to be in trouble. Indigenous leadership in conservation is the key to protect and continuing to protect the biodiversity that exists today. In spite of the colonial systems and policies globally on Indigenous people still hold 85% of the biodiversity on Earth. Imagine if that colonial policies are reversed and support is given by state governments and industry and corporations globally. What Indigenous people can do and exercise not only their rights, but their responsibility that they've demonstrated globally. 85% of the biodiversity that's left on Earth is given us a chance to fight against the existential threat of climate change and biodiversity loss. Investment in Indigenous leadership and investment in Indigenous knowledge systems is key to our survival on Earth. Not just protecting 30%. Protecting 30% is the easy part. How do we make sure that the Indigenous people have the financial resources to manage that 30%? Creating a boundary around an area that is threatened by climate change today is not going to do the job. We have to be active managers of a change in environment, a change in landscapes, waterscapes. That's the promise of Indigenous leadership. If we decolonize ourselves as individuals and as states and as corporations and move the colonial systems away from us to really recognize the leadership of Indigenous people and put the investment where it should be. You know, we live in a mostly a capitalist system of economies. What's the mantra of capitalism? Invest in what's proven to work. We need to remove carbon from the air. But most of the investment that today is going into technology that has not been proven. Let's invest in what's proven to work, and that's nature. And Indigenous peoples in Canada is demonstrating the leadership and the desire to exercise their responsibility where they have rights. This is an example for the world. And I think we need to recognize the responsibility that Indigenous people have demonstrated while they're fighting for their rights to exist as societies. I'm looking forward to further discussion of this. Thank you.
It's okay to applaud at a press conference. Yeah. Thank you, Stephen. Stephanie from Seal River Watershed Alliance.
What's Stephanie Trasi Hushe, Dennis Ushina Hessin. Sinise John Newhell Hidai do Newhell. I'm very happy to be here with you today. I'm very honored to be able to speak on behalf of the 4 First Nation communities that are in the alliance that I work for. So we are in northern Manitoba. We are the most north you can go in the province. I come from Saïsidena First Nation. We are leading this project to do this work to protect our space, our backyards, our home. We are working in partnership with the Northlands Denisotliina First Nation, Barrenlands First Nation, Opipinapiwin Cree Nation. So we are these 4 nations working together, different cultures, different languages, working to protect a space that is so dear to us for so many reasons. So I want to I hear all of these things that are being said at these discussions, at the negotiations, the things that my friend Stephen is talking about today. But I want to share something else with you. I want you to maybe close your eyes and to think, is there a place that exists out there in our world today that the air is clean, the trees are the same as they've been for hundreds of years, the rock formations on the boreal are the same as when Samuel Hearn traveled through to, he likes to say, discover the Northern Ocean. You know, this territory is still the same as it's been for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. And my nation and my neighbors, we have all been stewards of these lands. And if you can imagine reaching over and paddling a 7-day trip and taking a cup and dipping it into the water and drinking it, this is a piece of paradise that we work so hard to protect for our region and also for the work, you know, for the environmental work, for the economy, for ourselves, building that type of sustainable economy for ourselves. These are some of the reasons that big conferences like this don't realize they have a big effect on us as well. And it's really important that we think about people like us who are from these places that everyone is so busy talking about. We live in these places. We exist. Our cultures are there. Our languages, our community members. You know, the clothes that I wear signify that we come from a very long place in history, and we intend to continue to work doing that work to protect this piece of heaven that exists not too far from here. Masicho.
Thank you, Stephanie. Nadina Gardner, Cumberland House Cree Nation.
Tanse, Nadina Gardner Nisniga Aswin, Minister Minanagusquak, Uchinina. Hi, my name is Nadina Gardner. I am from Cumberland House, and I am part of the Cumberland House Cree Nation in Saskatchewan on the Treaty 5 territory. Where I come from, it is the Saskatchewan River Delta. We are in the heart of it. It is the largest inland delta in North America. So just a show of hands real quick, who knew that? 3 people. We're getting there. It encompasses over 10,000 square kilometers. It is our homeland. We have been there from time immemorial, and we've been stewards of the land. In June of 2021, the Cumberland House Cree Nation signed and put into effect a declaration. The declaration had made a commitment to the stewardship and protection of one of Canada's and my nation's most important natural assets, the Saskatchewan River Delta. The Cumberland House Cree Nation, under the natural laws of our people, not of the colonial system, but our laws, made a declaration on the jurisdiction and protection of the Delta. Under this declaration, our nation commits to working with partners to ensure protection of one of our greatest gifts, the Saskatchewan River Delta. It's central to our survival as a people, not just physically, but culturally. Everything in our area, our culture, depends on our landscape, and it's dwindling. Our delta is dying from upstream impacts, from economic impacts that are not done with a social conscience to our landscape. With this declaration that the Cumberland House Cree Nation has done, the Saskatchewan River Delta is in the heart of the boreal forest, a sanctuary for all beings that share its waters, vital to migratory birds and animals, critical to the filter of water and storage of carbon. Today, the Saskatchewan River Delta is formally protected under the laws of the Cumberland House Cree Nation and its membership. a sacred place we will continue to look after forever. You know, coming to this conference, and I was asked to come and sit on this panel and speak, I spoke to these people and I said, this is not my forte. Sitting at a panel in front of all of these people speaking, I said, I'd like to take all of you guys back to my home, take you guys into the bush, take you guys into our Delta and show you guys. That's where I guess you could say shine. This is not my forte. Our people relied on that Delta, and it has brought me into this world, has brought my elders into this world. We owe it to the Delta to in turn come up here and speak for it and advocate for it. Indigenous peoples live it every day in their homelands. We are stewards, and we need cooperation from industry, from government, to really put your money where your mouth is. We are willing to do the work. We are doing the work. We just need partnerships that believe in the same things that we do to step up to the plate and come to our locations, see what we are living with, see what we are doing. We are doing it at a small scale. And I know with places like this and stepping out of our comfort zones, we can reach other people in different communities that we can partner with. I've just met some today that I'm sitting up here with that I know that those are partnerships that will just grow and bounce ideas off of. But I just want everybody just to take time today just to look, just Google Saskatchewan River Delta. See what this beautiful landscape does. I just, like I said, this is not me sitting up on a panel. But I thank everybody for taking the time to listen. But I think for the people of the Cumberland House Cree Nation, it's our livelihood. It's our cultural livelihood. And we talk about connectivity. It's not just connectivity for animals, it's connectivity for our culture. It goes hand in hand. If we don't have our culture, we don't have our language. Then we are extinct as a people, as a Cumberland House Cree Nation. So I thank you for your time.
Thanks, Nadina, for bringing us there to the Delta with your words. James Snyder, WWF Canada.
Well, I have to say that I'm honored by these conservation leaders really to join you here today. We know that we're in the urgent moment for action. The science is clear that wildlife populations around the world have declined by more than 2/3 on average since 1970. The moment for action is now, for urgent ambition and what we strive to achieve to halt and reverse the loss of nature, to move to a nature-positive future. We know that we need to work towards protection of 30% of our lands, freshwaters, and oceans by 2030. But to do so in a right and just way requires that we support, advance Indigenous peoples' rights and priorities, that we support and advance and protect Indigenous peoples' rights and priorities, to support their governance systems, their sovereignty, their self-determination, their economies, their culture, and their knowledge systems. We've heard here today of 3 examples of Indigenous-led conservation that shows to the world that this is possible, that shows to the world that we can invest in Indigenous nations, in their economies, and the work that they're doing on the ground. And the benefits of that are vast, far beyond the pure ecological. And today I stand with my colleagues here and say, is this not the model that we want to achieve? And should this negotiation today not embrace those principles first and foremost in all that we do? Thank you.
Thanks, James. I know we're getting pressed for time because of things moving along, but we're very happy. We can continue. Thank you. Excellent. We have some time. When have you ever heard that? So we do have time for questions, if in particular, if any journalists who are in the room would like to ask questions of any of our panelists. And I think there's also an ability to check online, but I don't know where I'm. Oh, yep, we have someone back here. Thank you.
No, I don't think so. Thank you. Well, my name is Kadir Lavadens, coordinator of the Global Campaign to Demand Climate Justice, and I do have a question. First, on the term nature positive, because our concern is that it does not add anything to biodiversity, really. It's a peer concept. So why divert the attention to a concept that we are concerned when there are so many other elements to concentrate on in the GBF, including indigenous people's rights that should be at the center, but not distracted by a concept. Also on the term nature-based solutions, why is the idea to put together like good projects, very good projects in terms of agroecology or whatever, together with offsetting projects within the same term? Because we just received some news on offsetting on Congo, for example, this Total and the eviction of indigenous people's lands and how children cannot go to school after oil giants, 40,000 hectare tree plantation buried them from their own fields. So yeah, I would like to have some elaboration on that. Thank
Yeah.
you.
We're here to talk about Indigenous-led conservation in Canada, but James, if you have a couple of words to address any of that.
Well, I think very quickly, I would say, the science is clear in terms of the need for us to very quickly halt and reverse the loss of nature. And the intent with Nature Positive is that by 2030, that we have more nature than we started the decade. And for me, I think that's the core of the idea. Nature-based climate solutions provide us, I think, an important opportunity to bring together action that delivers benefits for biodiversity and climate change at the same time. And in the same way, also advancing Indigenous-led conservation. For me, that is a crucial opportunity that we need to embrace, and here within the GBF, an opportunity to ensure that nature-based climate solutions are recognized in the text.
A question over here.
Hi, Lindsay Botts from CR Magazine. When we think about 30 by 30, I know Prime Minister Trudeau has already committed to it. Can you just speak a little bit about how Indigenous-led conservation efforts can help contribute to that as an overall goal for the country? Thanks.
Steve?
Well, 30% is a target, and that's a target that we're embracing now, not only as Indigenous peoples, but the non-governmental organizations and everybody under the sun, pretty much. That's what is connected to the Paris Accord, and 1/3 of the solution to climate change is nature. So what does that mean? Is 30% the maximum we want to go? Or is there a time when we need to protect 50%? Is it the geographic location? It's important to not just look at the target, but what type of environment that should be in that target. Protecting 20,000 square kilometers of rock is not going to do us any good. So that's where we need to connect the Indigenous people's responsibilities and rights and protecting their territories that they know that they, like the back of their hands. They've been surviving on those lands for eons. They know the biodiversity that's there. They know the interconnections and the relationship between man and biodiversity is required, and the different types of land. So we need to be able to connect the type of lands we need to manage and protect, so that those lands can continue providing a service to humanity, to all life on Earth, and connected to even the offsets and carbon markets, for an example, so that we incentivize the right type of lands to be protected and managed in the world. So we are drawing the straws right now. We are in the 11th hour of our battle against the existential threat of climate change and biodiversity loss. We need to be able to try new things and be aggressive in implementing the new initiatives. So in some provinces and some jurisdiction, we may need to protect 60, 70% because of the type of environment that jurisdiction has. Some may not require 30 or 50 or even 10%, just because of the jurisdictions and the type of lands that's there. So we got to be smart about it. We can't just say 30%. Let's get to 30%. We got to 30%, we're there, we're good. It's about protecting the right 30%, if need be more in certain jurisdictions. But just as important is, why is it that 85% of the remaining biodiversity are on indigenous peoples' lands? What can the majority, dominant societies learn from indigenous peoples and the way we view our relationship with nature? Because getting to 30% is not going to cut it. We need to change our worldviews. We need to have a better relationship with nature. We need to understand that we are nature, that we don't have the power to shape nature in our image. We need to adapt to nature, the life-giving force of planet Earth.
Stephanie? Just get you.
I forgot to press the button. So, the facts speak for themselves. The facts speak for themselves. Indigenous people protect 80% of the world's biodiversity right now as we speak, right? So the Seal River Watershed Alliance is 50,000 square kilometers. It is a fully intact watershed. It is the size of Nova Scotia or Costa Rica, and it is 99.97% pristine. So there's this beautiful intact watershed that is a home to 23 species at risk. We have so many different biodiversity reasons why we need to do this, right? But we also we carry 2 billion tons of carbon in our watershed. So this is a huge amount that's just sitting in the watershed, and as we continue to leave it in this space, it's slowly turning back into oxygen. It's slowly acting as a set of lungs for the world that we're seeing that she so desperately needs. So in terms of the 30 by 30 mark, these spaces are so important to these targets because they hold so much value.
And we have a question over here. Thanks.
Cheers, thank you. Yeah, Mark Worthing from Weedna Foundation in coastal British Columbia. I want to thank all the good work everyone's doing in their home territories. It's really beautiful to see, and especially in relation to uplifting your own natural laws, your own governance systems above that of the colonial governance. I want to also thank my brother from the global climate justice community for the question. I know a lot of the people I work with in so-called British Columbia really want to pursue nature-based solutions. They really want to do it rapidly. They know the urgency and they're seeking those solutions, and they do steward their landscapes already. But they're really, really scared about nature-based solutions kind of falling into those pitfalls of carbon essentialism, of becoming false climate solutions. And so the earnest intention to deliver is there, but there's a lot of people kind of waiting right on the edge of wanting to jump in because they know it can easily be commodified. It's very problematic. There's a lot of carbon cowboys out there. They don't want to recreate those colonial dynamics. So what checks and balances exist, if you could talk about it, to make sure that there's accountability in place, and so it doesn't actually fall short? Because nature-based solutions is a tool. It can be a tool of oppression, or it could be a tool to solve the climate crisis. And there's a huge spectrum in there that makes the term very problematic. So people are looking for integrity, but they're a little bit worried about whether it's just a false climate solution. Cheers.
Thanks. Stephen would like to take that question.
Thank you for that question. And it's totally understandable why indigenous peoples globally are afraid about nature-based climate solutions, because of exactly that, the carbon cowboys, colonialism, history of oppression. Those are real things that are happening still today in lots of places. But at the same time, what's proven to work? Indigenous peoples and their relationship with their territories is what's working today. That's where the investment needs to go. Today, carbon projects and carbon offsets was a tool created to give nature the 1/3 solution a chance. But the natural propensity of carbon cowboys of colonial societies to just go after the money and focus on the money is putting that whole concept in danger. The greatest threat to the carbon economy is the integrity of the carbon projects. Why? Because we're removing nature from the carbon. We're focused only on the carbon and not the biodiversity that's attached to that carbon, that ecosystem services that's attached to that carbon. It's got to be done together. And we don't have time to reinvent the wheel to create some other new tool. We need to invest in what's proven to work. We need to protect what's proven to work. So what my thinking is, we need to protect Indigenous peoples, their rights and their responsibilities, and give them the space and the resources for them to continue doing what they've been doing. That has 85% of the biodiversity that's left on Earth on their territories. Indigenous people should not feel afraid. The states, the United Nations, should be protecting those Indigenous peoples so that we continue to do what we've been doing that's given us a chance to fight against climate change. Thank you.
Thank you all for your time and attention. If anybody would like to interview any of our panelists, please reach out to WWF Canada. Thank you.